Welcome back to the Informed Pregnancy and Parenting Podcast. Today's episode is Labor Day Surprises. We are here with Sarah Write Olsen and Daniela Ruah and her husband, David Olsen, and a bunch of babies. Oh, and Brian Herzlinger.
Wow. That's an appropriate order.
One of the babies.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's get into the juicy details. You, Danny and Dave, you told me you found out you were breached just a few days before your baby, Sarah, was born.
Correct.
Came into the office. We try to do some chiropractic and massage and adjusting, which usually we do 3 or 4 times. You gave me one shot.
No, she gave you one shot.
She gave me one shot. And then that was like on a Friday, I feel like.
Yes.
Just before Labor Day.
Yes.
And the next time I connected with you was?
At Sunday at 2 a.m.
Like 2 o'clock in the morning on Labor Day. You shot a quick text saying, hey, any chance you're awake? And I said, sure, what's up?
Well, we have to preface this. I had an OB who I absolutely adored. He's a wonderful, wonderful physician. But he unfortunately only does C-sections when it comes to breech births. And I had openly told him, I'm healthy, baby's healthy. I'd love to try this as a vaginal birth. I really don't want to resort to a C-section unless we really, really have to. So he said, I can recommend another physician to you, or you can have a home birth. And so I never got the recommendations because we were, weeks out from the birth. And so, so I kind of went home and we tried to turn her, et cetera, et cetera. And then on Sunday of Labor Day weekend at 1:30 in the morning, my water broke. And I went into active labor because the contraction started.
Was it like a very big, obvious gush, or was it like?
Well, I was sleeping. Dave fell asleep on the couch in the living room watching TV, and I was in bed at 1:30 in the morning, and I just felt this, warm water gush, and I just opened my eyes and I was like, oh crap, I know what this means. And in fact, because I didn't get contractions with River when my water broke, I was just hoping that I would with her because I really didn't want to get induced again. So I got up and I, took my wet pants and myself to the living room to go and wake up Dave. And he's like, what's up? What's going on? I said, I think my water just broke. And Dave exhaled and then said, but can we labor at home like we planned for a little bit before we go to the hospital? I was like, no, sweetie, the water broke. We really, it's time to hustle because we don't have bags packed. We have River. My mom was on a plane on her way to us, so she would be there supposedly for the birth. Luckily, Dave's parents were in town just for that weekend.
But also, nor did you have a doctor.
Nor did I have a doctor, which is why I have such a pregnancy brain. Thank you. Which is
You're
why I was,
welcome.
at this point, I had no doctor. But I called my original OB and I said, hey, I need that recommendation.
You called him at 2 o'clock in the morning?
I think I called him either right before or right after you.
Okay.
I think it was right before I contacted you.
Sometime early in the morning
Yeah.
on Sunday morning.
So I texted you, I texted my doula, and I called the doctor and I said, I need that recommendation.
Wait, did you have the doctor's phone number?
No. I had called his answering service, and he called me back.
Say, I need to have a conversation with Dr. Goldberg.
Oh, yeah.
No. I didn't. Anyway, so the three of you basically came up with one name in common. You all had different recommendations, but one name was common amongst you, Dr. Crane. And so I called him, and I left a voicemail and said, hi, you don't know me. And my water broke. I have a breech baby. I know that you deliver vaginally, and I really want to try it out. It's my second child. Please, 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 I beg you, call me back.
You called his office?
I called the answering service that way. I Googled him.
Oh, you Googled him and called his answering service.
Yeah, or maybe you or my doula sent me the number, but it was for the office regardless. But he calls me back from his cell phone and asks me all the questions necessary. And he said,
how soon after you left the message?
15 minutes,
Wow.
20 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, in the middle of the night on a weekend.
Oh, and because because he hadn't called me back, in my mind, those 15 minutes felt like an eternity because
Sure.
I'm like, I'm going to have this baby in my bedroom with no help.
Right.
So at that point, I texted you, and you recommended yet another doctor who I also spoke to. But in the meantime, Dr. Crane called me back, and asked me all the questions necessary. He said, you're a perfect candidate because of your height, and it's your second child, and your firstborn was not a very big baby. It's 37 weeks. So for a bunch of reasons, it seemed appropriate to give this a shot. So he said, meet me in my office, call me when you're 10 minutes out. And that's what we did. I was literally running around the house with an app that I downloaded at the moment so I could time my contractions. And, so I was running around packing my own bag, Even when he was on the phone with me asking me questions, I was like, give me 1 second, just breathing through a contraction.
I was just going to ask you, did you have contractions?
Oh, yeah, I was having contractions. And they moved along very quickly, actually. They were, at first 10 minutes apart, but within an hour, they were, maybe 5 minutes apart. And it was pretty quick.
Wow.
So I was trying to get a box of snacks ready for River to eat at the hospital because all of a sudden, we don't have somebody to stay with us or to take him somewhere else.
You were not originally planning to have him at your birth?
No.
And he didn't end up coming?
He was at the hospital until my mother-in-law arrived.
Got it. Okay.
And I'll tell you how that felt to have him there in a second. But anyway, so I'm running around trying to put a box of snacks together for him and literally going down to the floor into fetal position, breathing through a contraction, and then, looking at my watch going, okay, I've got 3 minutes to get this done and get myself in the car before the next contraction comes.
Right.
So, or 4 minutes, whatever it was. So I was hustling, and then in the car, I just kind of like Sarah did too. I was sitting in the front seat with my seatbelt on, but facing the back. River was in the seat, not really understanding why Mommy was doing this through contractions. And Dad's like, River, tell Mommy she's doing a great job. We're trying to keep it positive for him, not to be scared of these visceral noises that I'm making.
So you didn't prep him at all for being at a birth?
Well, I didn't really expect him to.
Has he seen birth videos or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
No,
So
we didn't at
brand new.
all. Nothing. He was supposed to stay home with my mom had she, had everything happened in time. And so we got to the hospital, and I was still very conscious. I got to the doctor's office.
Yeah.
He checked me. He said, you're at 4 centimeters, which I was really happy about because everything was, it felt what it felt like, but it was bearable. And so he said, I'll see you in the hospital in 20 minutes. And my doula had met me at the doctor's office too. So we went to the hospital, and River and Dave were there. And during a contraction at some point, Dave told River to come hold my hand. I can't remember exactly what you said, but basically you put River next to me and put him close to me. And I'm not kidding. It actually helped the pain.
Yeah.
It was a very, very conscious help to the pain to have him hold my hand and stroke my hair and tell me that I was doing a great job, Mommy.
Where was Dave during this? What's going on?
No, Dave and they were both in the room with me. They were both right next to me,
Were you doing the hair stroking thing too?
No, River was, but
Were you eating
Dave
the
was
box
just
of snacks,
controlling the situation.
Dave, what were you watching on TV when this all happened?
I was just there.
No, you weren't. You were
Just
holding
there.
my hand the whole time.
I think it's fascinating, though, that this night timeline was amazing to me. I love hearing the story because you went to the doctor's office.
Right, at 4 o'clock in the morning.
At 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning.
It was 5 when we got there.
Okay. And then you end up meeting him at the hospital.
Which is not far away.
No, it's like literally
close.
5 minutes away.
But it's kind of amazing. In very few towns do you even find doctors who do vaginal breech birth anymore. You basically had a choice of 3 that night. You narrowed down 1 because you wanted to do hospital birth. And then you had 2 that you were kind of back and forth with.
Yeah.
None of whom you had ever met before, but all available to take you on if you met their criteria. And then, you go to the doctor's office in the middle of Beverly Hills at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
And you're like, I'm 4 centimeters.
And you're
this
contracting,
is great. I'm so excited.
and you're already
I was
4
so
centimeters.
happy. I was just happy that my body was doing what it was supposed to do without any help. That's what I was happy
Unexpectedly
about.
have your kid with you.
Yeah.
It's just Labor Day surprise, I think, is a good title. There were more surprises than I even knew about. Had you guys talked about breech birth before?
Had we talked about it?
I mean, you knew you were breech, but I mean, did you look into the different pros and cons of vaginal versus cesarean?
Did we talk? We talked so extensively about how we would ideally deal with birth. Had I started contractions without the water breaking, we knew that we wanted to stay home as long as possible.
We had a meeting with the doula to go through the planned birth of where to labor, when to go in, if there's traffic, all this other stuff. There was an established plan that was pretty good. And then when it was breech, kind of all hell broke loose because we didn't have anything. Then when Sunday came and at 1:30 in the morning she wakes me up from the couch, I thought to myself, "Ooh, if I'd fallen asleep in the bed, this might not have happened." That was my first thought. We had no doctor. We had nothing. So between 1:30,
no traffic.
That's true, which is
That
rare.
is true. You were worried about the traffic.
It was Sunday on Labor Day weekend and in the middle of the night. No traffic, which was our biggest concern because we live far away from Cedars, which is where we delivered.
Yeah. And we had toured Cedars. She had selected Cedars. And the fact that we, like you said, found the doctor that would do a vaginal breech birth on a Sunday, and he didn't have another patient, and he was available. I mean, to even do it was, the stars were kind of aligned.
Yeah, a lot of things came together.
Yeah.
Had you guys seen the documentary we made about
I
breech?
did.
You
I did. Not Bottoms Up. What is it called?
Heads Up.
Heads Up.
Bottoms Up would have been great. No problem
that's
with
the
Bottoms
sequel,
Up.
yeah.
That's right. Sorry. Yes.
Bottoms
Heads
Up is right after this podcast.
They're both expressions. Yes. Yeah, I had seen it for sure. And I remember Dr. Paul Crane was on there, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and
I'd
he's
seen
very
it, and it gave
comfortable
me...
with breech. You already had a vaginal birth, and that's
Yes,
his big
exactly.
thing. Once you have, he's very comfortable. He's
Yeah.
done many of them. And
you know what? At the end of that documentary was what I think was a big part of sealing the deal for me in doing it unmedicated, because the video that you show at the end of a woman delivering a breech birth vaginally on her bed at home was so peaceful. And I know that doesn't always happen in all births. I mean, some women are louder than others, whatever it is. But it just gave me confidence that this could actually be a reality and a positive one, too. And another thing also was when I was with Dr. Crane in his office, and after he checked me, he said, "You're 4 centimeters." And then he says, I don't know if I'd already told him I wanted to do this unmedicated or not, but he says, "I don't usually push the epidural unless the mom wants it, but I think you're perfectly capable of doing this unmedicated." And to hear that from my doctor, which was a big contrast from the doctor who delivered River, it was a huge deal for me. So having the confidence of my husband, having the confidence of my doctor, and my doula, of course,
Which
like
is
all
very
of that
empowering.
together, I was like, I can actually do this. I have the village and the team of people that I need to make this happen. Yeah, so as Dave said, the stars just kind of aligned, even though it was a, heads up
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, a little surprise. How was the how was that actual experience of pushing your baby out? You can't compare it exactly to your first because you were medicated the first time, but was there? I mean, there's such a fear society around birth in general, and breech even more so. And it's not, not everybody who's breech is a good candidate for vaginal birth. I'd never suggest that anybody who's breech just go into it lightly, but you can always explore the option.
Yeah.
Some people are great candidates, some people not good candidates, and there's everything in between. The film is headsupfilm.com. It's called Heads Up, The Disappearing Art of Vaginal Breech Delivery, and your Dr. Paul Crane is in there, along with a few others. And the goal is not to really encourage people to have a vaginal breech birth, but to know that it's an option and to be able to have that option available to them if they're a good candidate. You're probably one of the greatest candidates.
But one thing I will say for anybody who's listening and who is interested in having a vaginal breech birth is that there's, or actually an unmedicated birth in general, which is, and I know Sarah went through this too, she can describe it herself, but I definitely went through this, and it was very much watching Sarah do it too, which is informing yourself as much as possible. It's reading the most positive stories you can find about what you're about to do, watching positive videos, really kind of, not allowing yourself to ever fall into the negativity of some stories, which are not as positive. But those are not as common as one would think. It's like we grow up in this world watching movies where women are screaming to death, having babies, pushing them out. And you grow up thinking this is something I have to go through in order to have my baby in my arms versus an amazing experience and journey that will lead to this wonderful baby in my arms. And so, I read as much as I could and watched as many beautiful videos as I could, peaceful ones. Even if my birth wouldn't end up being, that silent, I had that in the back of my head.
Was it noisy?
My birth?
Yeah.
I want to say but Dave's nodding his head.
It was noisy.
Whatever you do with your face and your jaw, if it's tense up here, then you're going to be tense down there too.
Yeah.
And so I made a very conscious effort to try and keep my face relaxed through all the contractions. And then another thing too is your throat. If you're making low visceral sounds, like that, everything's open. If you start going up into this your throat is closed. You know what I mean? Because you have to close your throat to make that high-pitched sound, and that's going to happen down there too. And so I remember maybe in the more intense parts of it, I was starting to make higher-pitched sounds, and my doula literally went, Dani, low sounds. And she brought me back down to the pit of, my core. which kind of helped me relax all over again. And listen, I'm not going to pretend it didn't hurt. Of course it hurt. Like, your body's doing something incredible. But it was an experience that I would absolutely go through again, in all honesty.
Great. Was there panic?
No.
Was nobody around? Dr. Crane was relaxed. The nurses
Everybody was relaxed. Dr. Crane never even left the room.
Oh, yeah, he's
My
amazing.
eyes were
he's
shut
one
the
of
whole
a
time.
kind. I mean, you're also the doctor that you switched from is also kind of amazing.
Right.
And he's, most doctors would be like, no, I don't do breech and you shouldn't do breech. And he's not like that. He's like, I don't do breech, but there are people who do breech.
Right.
I feel like that's the way it's supposed to be. That's true informed consent.
Right.
I was just at a breech birth at Cedars last week, and also her second baby. And it was a little more chaotic because her doctor was coming from the valley. And when we got into the hospital, she was only a few centimeters. And within 20 minutes, she was complete. So they originally told her doctor, go back to sleep. It was in the middle of the morning, too. She's only 4 or 5 centimeters. And then they called him in a panic. They're like, oh, she's already 9, almost 10 centimeters. And a whole bunch of people ran in. They were terrified what would happen if the baby would come out breech. And he wasn't there yet. And so they were just kind of like, hold it in. They were saying don't push, but that essentially means hold it in. The baby's just naturally coming out.
Earlier, your body's going to push it out when it's ready to push out, regardless of what effort you make.
It was kind of neat because she was open to having people come in and watch because there's not a lot of breech delivery going on. This is another doctor, Dr. Brock, who is on our breech podcast, who is doing a lot of them now. And the residents want to learn. They're curious over there. So she was like, I don't care. Just whoever wants to come is fine. And she didn't have a doula. It was just me. I was coaching her. And
You are a doula.
I am a doula, but sometimes I do body work and there's a doula there.
Right, yeah.
She had her best friend who was amazing, and it was me. And I was looking at her, working with her breathing. And when I originally started in that room, there were like 3 people in the room. And I didn't even realize. I turned around, and there were literally 25 people in there.
Wow.
And it was cool that they all wanted to experience it and see it. But I was like, where did these 25 people even come from? It was 5 o'clock in the morning. There were some labor and delivery nurses. There was a couple of pediatric nurses. I think there were 2 helpful Honda guys. I'm not sure how they got in there. It just seemed like...
Are they sponsoring you? Because they
It just seemed like everybody was in there. But it was like a neat birth, and it was like almost like nobody was panicky. It would just seem like...
Yeah.
It was almost like thunderous applause when the baby came
How
out.
many people were in the room for us, Dave? Because my eyes were closed the whole time, to be honest with you, because I was sort of in the zone. But I hear that there was a few pediatricians,
There's about
etc.
15 people.
Was there really?
Yeah, it got pretty busy in there. Well, no, and just like Dr. Berlin said, they all wanted to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a whole staff of pediatricians in there.
But I guess
as soon as they heard the baby cry, they all left.
Yeah, they bring for breech births at that hospital, they always bring a pediatric team, and
That
each one
makes
has like a different. This one is like the resuscitator, and this one is each one has a goal, and if they need anything, boom, it happens right away.
Yeah.
But as soon as the baby looks great, they just take
That's
off.
good.
And it's a lot. By the time you come to, it's a lot more quiet.
Yeah. One of the things I do remember Dr. Crane saying, he said something about episiotomy. I don't know if he asked me or if he asked for the I don't know how that came up. I just heard the word episiotomy, and I just remember just saying, nope, no, thank you.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, we can, all right, I will determine this as we go along. Then I said, that's fine. And fortunately, I did not tear at all. No stitches, no nothing, which is miraculous. With River, I got 1 stitch, but... and another thing that really, really helped was Dave made me laugh during some of these contractions. He's pulling faces, but he did, and it really did help.
Maybe it wasn't intentional.
Oh, it was intentional.
Well, talk to us about the comedy. Was it jokes, or was it
No, he just
stories that were funny?
Dave and I have this thing where, like, if he's doing something, I'm like, can you stop doing that, please? He'll be like, oh, I'm going to keep doing it now. And in that situation, it felt so ridiculous to me. So every time I was, on a not having a contraction, I had 2 minutes to rest and just, recover energy. And Dave was like, babe, are you hungry? Do you need a snack? Do you want water? I'm like, no, I just need to sleep. I love you. Stop talking to me. And then a few minutes later, he'd be like, babe, do you want some water? I was like, no, I honestly, you need to stop talking. I love you so much. Stop talking to me. I don't want to talk right now. And then at some point, he gets really close to my face. He's like, hey, babe, babe, you want to talk? You need some water? I was like, oh my gosh, please leave me alone. But it was so ridiculous that he would do this in my mind in a moment like this where I'm supposed to be so focused that he just broke me out of that, I need to focus, I need to focus,
Getting
I need
in
to
your
focus.
head.
You got
Yeah,
you
I
out
was
of
getting
your
in my
head.
head, and he
Yeah.
helped me probably
Which is
unknowingly
really good,
totally
yeah.
relax and just laugh for a second.
I think, Dave, I'm sometimes overbooked, and some people want other male doulas. I think I have some side gigs for you.
You're gonna be the male doula.
Dave, the silent
The doula.
Any,
You should make
doula dude?
say audibly no right now.
Yeah.
They said yes. He said yes. It's in.
Great, my husband's going to be seeing other naked women. Woo!
All right, in a moment we're going to take a break and then come back with Sarah's Labor Day surprise. But Dave, any final word on this experience from your perspective?
It was kind of amazing. It was sad in a way that other people don't get the chance, that it's kind of a lowest common denominator sort of thing. I'm sure you'll talk about that later.
Other chance because the baby's breech? You mean?
Because it's automatically what they resort to. And it's kind of, I was in the military, and the lowest common denominator makes all the rules. So if someone drinks a car battery full of acid on base, they're going to ban all the car batteries on base. That's a fictitious, story, but, breaches are going away. And our experience was it couldn't be any better, And the candidates, obviously, the protocol to decide if someone can be breech is there, and if it is allowable to be breech, like our experience was so easy and so great that had she been under the knife, that would have been quite unnecessary. So that's the only thing.
Yeah, it's true, and sometimes people just come into the hospital and they didn't even know they were breech, and they're progressing very quickly, and the baby's coming out, and they don't know what to do. The younger and younger doctors, as the older ones who have that breech experience retire, they don't know what to do, and so it happens where they literally have to push the baby back in.
I just heard a woman talk about this the other day, where she said that they were like, oh, they had to push my baby back inside of me so that they could
Do a C-section and pull it out.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine the horror of that. All I know is that if there is a natural disaster and the hospital is out of play and a woman is breech and is going into labor, no one's going to know how to deliver this baby.
Right.
If the knife is not a possibility because there's no hospital functioning in that moment.
The good news is, and it's in its early stages, but there is another hospital here, California Hospital, where you almost
That's where I almost went, yeah.
They have enough doctors who do breech, and they're just recruited another doctor who does breech, and we're going to actually go show our film there next week to all of the medical staff and have a big discussion about it. Yeah. They're very open. They want to be able to offer that choice, and they want to sort of be able to set up 24/7 coverage, so no matter who comes there or when they come there.
I just don't know how young doctors wouldn't want to learn, just even if out of curiosity. It's a fascinating event.
Well, part of the problem is we don't have the capacity to teach because it's not happening. So you need to see a lot of them and be hands-on with a lot of them to have the comfort.
I guess so. What is it, 4% of births are breech?
4% are breech, so 160,000 in the United States every year, which is a lot. It's 1 every 4 minutes across the country. But in a city like Los Angeles, we have so many births, and Cedars-Sinai alone has around 8,000 or 9,000 births a year. So 4% of that are breech. There's
Cedar
enough.
was fantastic.
Who was Cedars?
Cedars-Sinai was just a
They were
fantastic place to
great.
give birth. The staff, the nurses.
Yeah,
I was really pleasantly.
You were there too. I love their Jello. They have really good Jello, among other things. All right, let's take one more break, and then we're going to come back and hear Sarah's epic birth story.
Doctor, give me the news. I got a whole lot of questions for you.